Okay, I guess we'll just get started and people are walking away. Okay. So I'm Kai Stern. I'm a graduate student in the Cadera Lab. I'm directing this course. So in the email that you received a link to the course website. So all the materials of the course will be on this website and it will be updated. So right now what you have is this is just an overview of the course, which was sent out in the email. But at the homepage you'll have the materials will be added. So I think by tonight we'll have the materials for Monday's class. A few days before the class, the website will be updated with the materials for the next class. So make sure to check the website. So the materials for version control is today's session is right over here, and I'm sure hopefully you all saw it already. Just a little bit of logistics about the class. Number one, we're going to be using the sign-in sheet rather than the scanning in the scanner, so just make sure to sign in every time you come. And just by raise of hand, how many people here use have a Mac? How many have Windows? It shouldn't be an issue for this session, right? Right. Windows should be fine, but yeah, I might have to work with you the other sessions just to make sure that everything flows smoothly. And I will also be sending out. I'll have a sheet maybe later on today where you just write down the kind of data you work with, because that will help with examples for the classes that will be coming about data management and testing your data. So just having an idea of what kind of data you usually will be helpful for us. Okay, and Rashama will get started on version control.
Hello, good morning. I want to introduce myself. My name is Reshma Sheikh, and I am a statistician by training / data scientist. I'm an organizer for 2 meetup groups in New York City, Women in Machine Learning and Data Science and Pi Ladies, and previously worked at a data science boot camp where I actually picked up Git, and so that's what we're focusing on today. So there's about 3 people that have Windows. How many of you were able to complete the pre-course survey or info? Okay, great. Okay. So before we begin, I also want to know how many people have Git installed? You can do the version. Okay, so maybe I'll ask the other question. How many people don't have Git installed? Just one person. Okay, great. Okay, so I have instructions over here on how to install it. So and if you at any point just raise your hand. So what I'll do is I'll go through step by step. Everybody will sort of do the steps, and if you have any questions, just raise your hand at each step, and Chai and I will go around and help people. Okay. So this is the GitHub repo that has all the course material. My GitHub user ID is Reshma S, Git, and that's that. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the GitHub interface. If you haven't looked at it, on the very right there is an avatar with my picture, and when I click on your profile, this brings us to my home page. I can put my name, email if I want it publicly available, my website. We can pin repositories, so if there are sort of like bookmarking pages that you frequently refer to, you can bookmark those repos here. This information gives what contributions have been made, and so more details on the contributions. So that's the home page. If you go to settings right here, this is where you can upload your photo, put your name, your bio information, and also there's other options which some of them will end up covering. But later on your own, if you want to do different things, just explore the settings area. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my profile. I'm going to go back to the Git intro. When if there's a repo on GitHub that you commonly use or want to follow, there's an option here to star it. So you can star it if you want. You don't have to, but you can get information on it. So about myself, this is my blog and my email. I covered that. We're going to be using Git, the command line interface. This is not for the Git GUI. That's the option that some people use, but this workshop covers the command line. These are the prerequisites, having terminal access either via Mac or Ubuntu, having some kind of editor that you feel comfortable with, and a GitHub account and Git installed. Okay? So, where I'm going to go is there's a lot of resources in the repo, and you can explore that on your own, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to workflows, okay? And I have different workflows set up, and so I'll start with an introduction about Git. Probably the simplest way is Git is version control. People make changes to programs, they change them later, and it's a way to easily get back and find old versions. This allows also for collaborating with other people. It's also a backup, way to back up. Easy way to remember, GitHub is on the browser, Git is at the terminal, and that's the key difference between Git and GitHub. Okay, so I'm going to open up this workflow 0.1 for software installations. This is a checklist, so I want to make sure you have access to terminals, some kind of editor of your choice, a GitHub account, and installing Git. I know we had a few more people walk in, so I'll ask the question again. How many people don't have Git installed? Okay, that's great. So that's great. So this is, I'm going to go back to now to setup. Okay, so this is a place where we can all begin. What we're going to do is we're going to set up SSH keys. SSH stands for Secure Shell. And what we're going to do is generate a key pair. And the way to do that is we're going to go to our home directory to type cd tilde. Okay. And I'll sort of go through these and then do the example. For me, when I click on pwd, which is print working directory, it brings me to users/Reshma. I go into cd.ssh. That dot indicates it's a hidden directory, but you go there. And I cd into it. And if you don't have the SSH directory, you may not have used it for other applications before, you can make the directory. You can either make it by being in your home directory and doing makedir.ssh, or if you're someplace else, location-wise, you do makedir tilde.ssh. Okay? And so to generate the key pair file, we type ssh-keygen. I don't know, is this large enough? Can you see it? Should I make it bigger? Okay, make it bigger. Is that better? Okay, all right. So we hit ssh-keygen and hit enter 3 times.
If anyone has trouble or is not following along, just raise your hand.
And I'll sort of just go through the next steps. And then, so what we're going to do is, first of all, generate the key file, and then we're going to copy it to the clipboard. And after that, we're going to connect the key file on your local computer to the GitHub browser so it knows to communicate with each other. So that's the purpose of doing this. So I'll take a tally in a few minutes to make sure that everyone has created their keygen file in their SSH directory. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy the key to the clipboard, and the way to do that is we say pb copy, and the syntax says, copy this private key. If you look, let me go to if I go to my home directory .ssh. notice that I have two keys, and you will have two also, ID_RSA and ID_RSA.pub for public. So we want the one without the PUB public extension. So what we want to do is you can copy this, and when I bring it over here, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, make sure you can see that. So it copies it to Clipboard, and when I do PB paste, what it does is it sort of just prints to the screen what's in that file. Okay? All right. So the next step is we go to our GitHub account. Okay, and I'm here. And we want to go to settings, and where it says select SSAs and GPG. So I go over here, I go to settings, I go to SSH and GPG keys. I want to add a new SSH key, which is this right here. And I'm going to call it GitHub key. And I do whatever command you have on your computer for pasting. For me, on a Mac, it's Command V. Okay. And I click on the green button at the bottom that says Add SSH key. Okay, and it will ask me for my password. Okay. Don't mind me, but yours will work because I have a bunch of other stuff there already.
Got the same error.
You got the same error?
Yeah.
Let's see. PB paste. Let's try. Hang on. I wonder. Making private.
Copy your private key, you copy your public.
Is that what I did?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's try that. Maybe that's it. PB paste. I have to update the instructions. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Command B. There we go. That should work. Okay. Let me just update these instructions right now, in case someone else is following along. Thank you. So we've done the PB paste part, copy, added the key, confirm. Okay, next is this. So what you can do is copy this right here. And just the part where it says user.name, we can put in your first name and your, for me, I'll do that. Okay, I'm not going to press enter. For me, just because I have my things set up. And also the same thing for email. This is, what's in the quote is the only part that you change. So. And then when I do git config list, what that tells me is what's in my configuration file, and we just added our email and user ID, and if I scroll up here, where is it? Right, there we go. It has my user and my email that's associated with it. So that's what git config list gives us. All right. Does anybody have any questions so far? I can stop by at your desk. Okay. So the next step is creating a working directory for repos. You can put the work wherever you want, whether it's on desktop or that. You can follow my settings. It might be easier just to follow along with the instructions. But as long as you know where your repo is and where you can find it, you know, you can put it wherever you want. So when I go to print in my SSH directory, so I'm going to back out, so it's cd ... right? And I already have a folder called ds, so I'm going to cd into it. But if you don't have that folder, you create it by mkdir ds, just like here. Okay? So I'm going to cd into ds, and then I'm going to cd into git sample. Okay? And for me, this is what I have in my sample. Your git sample directory will be empty, but these over here are instructions on how to create the directories and navigate into them. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and I'm happy to stop by and help.
This is just for reference, just to navigate around your file system on the command line.
Yeah, we're going to find that, you know, working with Git requires all these other sort of little bit of skills in navigating Unix and a little bit of skills in using the terminal and editor, some information about markdown files. So yeah, there'll be a lot of supplemental skills thrown into the Git workshop. So when I go to workflows, we went through the installs, the setup. We're going to do to workflow 1, create, update my repo. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a repo on GitHub, and I'm going to call that repo Git class. And so here's an example. So I'm going to go back to my profile. Okay? I think I have to make this a little bit smaller, just a little bit so I can see it. There we go. So this button, this plus button on the upper right-hand corner, if you click on that arrow, I have the option to create a new repository, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to call this repository Git class. I already have a Git class, so I'm just going to add a 2 to mine, maybe a 3. Okay. And I am going to, I'm just going to bring this over here. Okay, I'm going to put a description, test project for Git. I'm going to call it training for Git class. So we have the option to make it public or private. Public repositories are free. Private repositories are $7 a month on GitHub. So later on, if you're working on projects that are private, you could do that. But also, I think if you're affiliated with a university or an institution, you can probably get private repos through your association.
You get like 3 to 5 private repos.
I don't think so.
Maybe as a student account.
Maybe, yeah, there's
If you have
definitely.
if people like an EDU email account, you can get a student account and you can use some private.
Okay, yeah, if you have an EDU account, maybe you'll get some free repos. We always want to click on this, initialize this with the README, okay, and then we're going to click create repository. Okay, so we can see here that under my GitHub user ID, which is Reshma S, created a repo called Git class 3. This is where the description showed up. And it has a readme.md. MD is an extension that stands for Markdown. It's sort of a formatting. It's a way you can easily do bold, italics, links without having to raise your mouse. Like you can type, and I'll show that to you. So that's that. Okay. Create repository. So I'm going to do steps 1 and 2, and then I'm going to stop and let you also do it, and then we'll do step by step. So I'm going to add a markdown file called holiday.md, and to add a file right here, it says create new file, and I do holiday.md. I go back to the instructions. It says looking forward to pizza party with smiley. Okay. I'm going to copy that. You can type it in or copy it, whatever you prefer. And so I'm looking forward to the party, and then I have the word pizza surrounded by colons, and I have smiley surrounded by colons. What does that mean? I can preview the file here, and it says, looking forward to parties. So whenever I have certain words, not all words, but if they're surrounded by colons, it renders it into an emoji, okay? So in Markdown files, we can put emojis, all right? And let's see what the instructions say next. So here's an emoji cheat sheet. So this gives you all these other options that you can play with later on and have fun, okay? And so I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to commit a file. Commit is it's like saving a file, and because this is a new file, it gives us a default create holiday.file. I'm going to say created my first Markdown file in GitHub, or whatever message you want. Keep in mind we're in a testing environment, but when you're doing work for a project, you just want to make sure you have a meaningful commit, so later on it will make sense to you when you refer to it. Okay? And notice that file appears when I click on it. That's how it shows up. I'm also going to create a Python file. Okay? I'll go back up to this repo level, Git class 3. I'm going to do create new file. I'm going to call it really anything you want, but in this case, I'm going to call it hello.py, and I'm going to print hello world. Okay, I can also preview it. Notice that print, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it's in blue because it's actually, it looks at it as a Python because it's a .py extension. If I go to the bottom, create hello.py, for this I'm just going to take the default commits that they give me, create new file. When I go here, notice I have these two files here, okay? And this is a little GIF that says, ensure your commit messages are meaningful. All right, so I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to make sure that give everybody a chance to add a couple of files, we'll create your repo and add a couple of files, okay? So another thing is I use the example of the Python file, but depending on what programming language you use, whether you use R or Julia or Java or CSS, HTML, you can create any of those sort of files in this GitHub repo, add the extension to the file, SQL, there's lots of options. So I was going to move on to step 3 and 4. Would anybody prefer me to wait before I go? Does anyone need more time? Okay, all right. So step 3 is we're going to clone the repo from GitHub to our terminal. What does cloning mean? It means making a copy of something. So right now we are on GitHub. We have a copy of a repo here called Git class 3. And so the question is, okay, that's great. How do I bring it down to my terminal? Imagine this is going to be a coding project and you want to be able to, code on your own computer, okay? And so the way that we do that is we are going to click on the green button. So we'll go to the repo right here where it says clone or download, right? I have instructions for HTTPS or SSH. I think either is fine. Maybe you want to use, yeah.
I think the problem with using HTTPS, personally, I find using HTTPS, you have to put in your username and password for GitHub every time you commit.
Okay.
Your command line, it's just a pain. If you use SSH and you have your SSH key, you didn't add a password to your SSH key, you can just commit without having to enter a password every time. So it just makes it easier. I prefer using SSH.
Okay, so let's do SSH key because we also set up our SSH keys. I know yesterday I was doing a Git workshop and some weird stuff was happening, but I thought the same thing about SSH key. So let's do this. If it doesn't work for some people, it may not work for some reason. But we're going to copy. So click on this copy over here, okay? And then when I come back here, that's what my URL looks like. I'm going to go to my working directory, which is ds-git-sample. Okay, so just to print my working directory, that's where I am. And the syntax is I'm going to do git clone the URL name. So as an example, it's going to be git clone that, okay? And that's sort of saying make a copy of this URL on my computer. And it asks me a question, and I'm just going to type yes, and it does it. When I do ls, notice Git class 3 that I created is now there. Okay, so I just made a copy of my GitHub repo to my computer. Okay, and I'm going to cd into the repo. So cd git class 3. I'm just going to do that. And when I do ls, notice these files that I created up on GitHub, hello.py, holiday.md, appear on my local computer. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to stop here and just make sure everybody is able to clone the repo. Okay, I think everybody is all caught up. This is great. Okay, so now I'm on step 7, which is look at remotes, and the question might be, well, what is a remote? So remotes are copies of a repo. So we have over here on GitHub a repo called Git class 3 for me, and I want to look at the copy that I made on my local computer, and the way to do that is I do Git Remote Add. Okay, so this Git Remote -v doesn't change anything, it doesn't break anything, it sort of gives me some information, right, like listing a file on Unix. It just gives me information. So it lists what my remotes are, and it assigns it a default name of origin, which is a short name versus this long URL. And it says that I have fetch rights, which is also the same as pull rights, so I can pull information from the GitHub repo, and I have push rights, which means I can also push information up to GitHub. Okay. These are, we'll find out about this later, but we see that there's different names for it. If you happen to make a mistake where you added the wrong URL or something, this is the syntax for removing the remote. So you can easily remove remotes as well. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to sync the repo, and the syntax for syncing the repo. Let me make this a little bit bigger, I think. Oops. Okay. So is git pull. Okay. So I'm pulling any updates from the GitHub repo to my local computer, and it tells me it's already up to date, which we expect because when we cloned it, we didn't make any changes. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go up to GitHub and add a file called name.py. Okay. I'm going to create a file. Okay. Name.py. I'm going to say print my name is Reshma. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to commit the file. Okay. So notice here I'm in my repo. I have README and 3 additional files. I go to my terminal, my local computer, and I have a README and only 2 files. So the question is, how do I sync that up? How do I get the latest changes from GitHub down to my computer? The syntax for that is git pull. Okay. And that's fine. And when I do ls again, notice that that file, all 3 files appear, namely the name.py file, which I just created. Okay. So back to this again. So I will, before I go to branches, which are a whole different topic, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to create a new file on GitHub and pull it down. Okay? Okay, great. All right, we're off to the next section, which is branches. So the way to think about branches is there's sort of another line of development. Think of it as scratch work, right? So if I go to my GitHub repo, by default, every time a repo is created, there's the master branch, and it's one branch, right? So think of it as like a scratch paper, like something that you want to do work and you want to push it up to a different branch name, but you don't want to quite put it into master until you're sure of the changes that you want to make, okay? And so to find out what branches we have, the syntax for that is git branch. Okay? Git branch is also one of those commands that doesn't break or change anything. It gives us information. Okay? So for me, it shows up in green with this asterisk next to it. I don't think anybody else has this problem, but I have to hit quit to get out of this. I think I updated my software recently, and sometimes these things happen when you update either your operating system or update Python or Jupyter or something. It has this like ripple effect, but I just hit quit to get out of it. But most of you, it will just list your branches, okay? All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a branch, okay? So there's two ways to create a branch. The first is what I have here. So I can call it git branch. You can call it anything you want. One option is, I call it Reshma_WIP, work in progress. Okay, and another thing that you can call it is you can call it feature. Okay, imagine someone's doing website updates and they add a new feature to the branch or an application on an app. So you can call it git branch feature 1, but it will stick with the syntax that I have in the notes. Okay, so when I do git branch again, which lists the branches I have, notice that I have this new branch. It says master, which it's still on the master. It created the Reshma_WIP, but technically I'm still on the master branch because that's where the asterisk is, okay? So another way to create a branch is you do git branch -b, and I'm just gonna call this one feature 1, okay? And when I create a branch with this option -b, it creates the branch, hang on a minute. I think it's supposed to be, maybe it's git branch -d, hang on. No? No, okay, never mind then. Okay, never mind. We'll just stick with my notes. So that's a way to create a branch, okay. So I am going to see what branch I'm on. So I'm on the master branch. To go into my new branch that I created, I do git checkout Reshma_WIP. So if you ever want to change to a different branch, the syntax is git checkout and then the branch name, okay? And notice it tells me switch to branch Reshma_WIP, okay? So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ls, which lists what files are there, and I'm going to use this touch command. Anybody familiar with the touch command on Unix? Okay, so some people are. So what the touch command does is it creates a blank file, okay, and I'm going to call it touchmercury.md. Okay, when I hit ls, notice it appears. It's just a very quick way to create a blank file. Okay, so I've created mercury.md, listing. Okay, and so the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to get the status of repo. What's happening in my repo? It's a Git repo. It's useful for version control, so what's happening? So Git Status is one of those commands that doesn't change anything. It gives us information, so use it freely as often as you want. It won't break anything, it won't change anything. It's just information. So it tells me I'm on branch Reshma_WIP. Git is actually really good at giving us information and leading us in the right direction, right? So it says you have untracked files. If you want to add them, do git add file name. And notice it appears in red, okay? So I want to start tracking this file. I want to use this git functionality to track version control for my files. So I'm going to do git add mercury, and for most people, if you just type the first few letters of the file and you hit tab, it will autocomplete. I know sometimes some people's systems it doesn't always work, but most times it works. Okay, so git add. So I added a file. I want to know what exactly is Git doing. I type Git Status again. And notice that it used to be red, but now it's green. and it tells me I'm still on branch Reshma_WIP. It tells me the changes to be committed, and if I want to undo anything, the way to do it is I do git reset head file name, okay? So I've done the git add, and if the next step is git commit -m adding first planet file, okay? Git commit -m, okay? And when I do git status again, notice that that green is gone, and it just says I'm still on this branch, and it tells me I have nothing to commit. The working tree is clean. Okay. So I've gone to this commit. Yep.
Can you go over conceptually steps?
Just yeah. You mean the add commit?
Yeah. So you created the Mercury,
Right.
your local
Right.
computer. Then you upload it to.
Right. Okay. So what I did was I created the mercury.md file right here, right? When I go to my repo, it's not there yet because I haven't made any connection between my GitHub repo and my local computer, okay? And so the way to make that happen is there's 3 steps. The first step is I do git, I'm going to do history. The first thing that I do is, notice I do, first of all, I create the file if you ever type history, it's also a great Unix command to know. It just tells you your past commands that you've typed, so it's just a good way. And sometimes I will copy this stuff and I will paste it in my notes, so I can, if I'm at a workshop or someone's teaching, I can easily get that information. Okay. So I've created the file, I've checked what's happening, I've added the file, I'm again checking what's happening, I'm committing the file.
You added the file, you added it to the GitHub website?
No. So when I added the file, Git refers to it, it's called staging. So it's actually committing the file, and it's saying, tell this Git version control system to start tracking the file. So it's sort of like put it in our system, put it on the radar, right? Committing means, in a way, it's like I'm actually committing this file to the system. At first, I'm just tracking it, but now I'm actually committing it, right? So the next step is, okay, we've committed it. How do we actually get that file from my computer over to GitHub? Okay. So the way to do that, before we do that, I just want to hit Git Remote -v. Okay, remember our remotes are copies of our repo, and these are the short names for it, and this is the URL name. So to get that file up to the branch that I want it to be on, I do git push. So the syntax is git status, it's git push remote name and branch name, okay? So I want to do git push origin, which means I want to push it to this repo right here, and I want to push it to this branch name, which is Reshma_WIP. Now, there are, later on when you become, for people who are learning Git, when you become more proficient, you can do some shortcuts, but in the beginning it's sort of good to learn the whole syntax, because when you're working with different branches, you understand, which branch you're pushing to. So git push origin Reshma_WIP. And, again, Git is really good at telling you what it's doing. It's like, let's make these changes, create a pull request, And then when I go to the GitHub repo, sometimes you might want to hit refresh, notice that it tells me that there's a pull request that I submitted, and when I look at the branch master, notice that those 3 original files are there, but that Mercury file I created is not in the master branch. And that makes sense because I didn't push it to the master branch. I pushed it to Reshma_WIP, okay? So, and when I look here, that Mercury file appears, right? So you can imagine when you're doing a workflow, you sort of want to save changes, you want to push them, you don't want to quite commit them to the master area yet. And so that's what I've done over here. Yeah, question?
I got an error when I tried to push
Okay.
SRC respec.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right here, and I stopped at 19. Actually, maybe 20. Okay, I stopped at step 20. So if you want to go ahead and do the example, and we'll go around and if anybody has any questions, we can help. Hey everyone, so I just wanted to answer a question that I received from 2 different people, so I guess other people have it. So in my master branch, I have the 4 files that I started with, and then in my Reshma_WIP, I have 5 files total. And so some people ask, well, how come, I thought if I created a branch, it would be empty, and then I could create a file, and then they thought that maybe they might just see that new file that I created in the branch. I think the way to maybe envision it is it's an incremental thing. So once that branch master is created and we create a new branch, it takes everything that has been added up to then and it creates a new branch, right? So it's additive. It's not a blank branch. And I guess if you think about software development or website development or application, it sort of builds on things. So if you want a branch that's completely empty for whatever reason because you have a different project, it's best to have a different repository for that project. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, these are all good questions. It's interesting once you get past the the syntax part of it, then it becomes workflow questions and what's the best way to manage files. And does anybody else have any questions? Are we ready to move to the next, to the submit a pull request? Okay, all right, so is anybody not ready to move ahead and want some more time? Okay. All right, so I'm going to come up here. So one option that we could do is we could just leave this, right? Like when I'm working and, I might create new files, I might create new features, I can just keep pushing it to my work in progress branch, okay? But one example of submitting a pull request is, let's say, I look at this Mercury file, I'm like, yeah, it looks good, it's what I want it to be. How do I get it over to my master branch? Well, I do compare pull request, and it tells me up here, I'm opening up a pull request, and it says my base is master, and my comparing is the Reshma_WIP, and I want to add my first Planet file. This commit message stays with me from my terminal, and I can come down here and I can say create pull request. And because this is my repository, I can actually merge the pull request in. So imagine if you're working off of somebody else's project. We'll do an example later, but they would have the merge rights to merge that pull request. But because this is your repository on your account, when you submit a merge request from another branch, you have the rights to merge it in. So I'm going to merge it in, I'm going to confirm it. Sometimes you can write a comment to the person who contributed. Okay, it says pull request successfully merged and closed. So that once I hit that, that one's going to be gone. And notice my Mercury file shows up here. Okay, so I have it on master, and then I also have it on on the work in progress. So the other thing, sort of to keep in mind down the line, if you're working with branches and you make a feature update or one specific thing, once that's all set and final and everyone in the project is happy with it, later on you can delete the branches. It's good to delete them. Otherwise, sometimes you'll end up with 20 branches for different things. So this is much later on down the line. All right, so, and this is a summary of the steps there, just to see, sort of like a short cheat sheet, a reference sheet, So the next step, we actually just made it through the first workflow, which is cool. And we're going to go to the second workflow, which is pull request organization. Okay. And so, I'll go through the first few steps of this and then give people a chance to work on their own. Okay. So, Sometimes you can, here's a repository under my meetup group, and it's called, it's an organization, Women in Machine Learning Data Science, and this is a repo. Keep in mind, even in terms of like contributing to open source, there's millions of repositories on GitHub, right? So suppose you want to contribute to a repository. You technically can take any repository on GitHub, fork and clone it, make changes and submit a pull request, and the person who owns the repo, if they want to, they can accept that change. I think that's really the power of Git and GitHub and open source, that anybody can contribute to it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fork it. I may have already forked it, but let's try it. And it tells me fork again to a different account. Okay, so when we fork it, it takes the original repo and creates a copy of it under our own account. And that's good. It's good practice, right? We want to work with our copy and not somebody else's copy. So notice up here, under Reshma S, my GitHub account, I have this repo, and it says I forked it from this organization or that user, and that's it, right? So the next step is, presumably it's coding or some changes that I want to make on my computer, and so how do I do that? Well, I come here, and once again, I do clone or download. This goes to SSH again, copy it, okay, go back to instructions. I want to go into, so another thing, this is more workflow, but when you're working with a lot of different repos, which often you will once you start working with Git, it's good to have a folder that says, these are where all my Git repos are, so you don't get confused with other projects. So I'm going to CD out of this. These are all my repos. I'm going to clone, okay. For me, I'm going to remove my Python Advanced just because I had it from a previous example, okay? And I'm going to clone it, so I'm going to do git clone, okay? And I'm going to make a copy of that repo. And so it does it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git remote -b. Again, that's a syntax that gives me information, doesn't make any changes. And it tells me, what did it do then? Oh, and this, I do make this mistake every single time. I'm like, oh my God, something awful happened. I didn't do what I was supposed to. When I list the repo, it cloned the repo, but before I start working with it using git commands, I have to cd into that repo, okay? So I'm going to cd into it first, okay? Then I'm going to do the git remote -b, and I see that it's there, okay? So that's what it is, and it tells me that for this URL, it's giving it a short name called origin, and I have, again, fetch right, same as pull rights, and push rights to it, okay? And so I cloned it, I did the git remote, so I'm going to stop at step 6 and give everyone a chance to get up to that point, and then I will pick up again at step 7, okay? Hey everyone, so a couple of comments. The first is definitely make sure that your user ID is easy to remember, but make sure you have your password somewhere where you can definitely reference it, because if you can't, at different points, sometimes if I delete a repository, I will get the prompt, what's your password? So if you don't know your password, you'll sort of be stuck and you won't be able to go further in a lot of places. I think for me, the reason, partly I think my Git is acting a little bit weird is I did the 2-factor authentication recently in the last few months. So if I log in, I go to my iPhone and I make sure, because I just want it to be secure. And so I know that I always have to do extra level of security if I'm working on AWS or Google Cloud. So keep those things in mind. Yeah. So I'm going to go on to the next step unless anybody has any questions. So it's about 12 of, so at about 11. So at 11 we'll take a 10-minute break. And so people can take a break, and if you have any questions. And also after the break, I will go over some of the, I have information here about the, I had information about intro to Git, which maybe I should have started with, but sometimes I feel like let's just go into it and get moving in Git versus like it's just a different approach. So I am going to go to this, I think. Git Remote Add Upstream. Okay, so that's right, we stopped at step 6. Look at the remotes. Okay, so somebody asked this question too. Well, how do I, like, why would I want to, why would I want to fork a repo? Why don't I just clone the repo, the organization's repo, just like I did with my own repo? The benefit to forking it is you are able to make changes and send it up to your forked repo and then submit those change requests, right? So with an organization, if you clone the repo, it goes this way, right? But you're not going to be able to send any changes up that way over here because you don't have rights to it, okay? So the reason that we're forking it is we take an organizational repo, we fork it, we bring it down to our computer, make whatever changes, and then if we want to submit those changes to the repo, and we'll do that by adding the remotes, we can do it that way. That's the reason we fork other people's repositories or organizations instead of cloning it. Okay? Cloning is fine if you just want to look at their stuff and explore it, but if you want to submit changes, we have to use the fork. Okay, so back to the terminal. So I have 2 remotes, and so the remotes I have are from my forked repo. So how do I make that connection? From this terminal here up to there to make those changes. Okay, and the way to do that is this right here. It's called Git Remote Add Upstream, and what it says, what it means is I want to add another remote. Remember, a remote is a copy of a repository. So I want to add another remote, and I want to call it upstream. It's common nomenclature, but technically you can call it whatever you want. Okay, and this is the URL for that repo. Okay, and when I press enter, and when I do git remote -v again, what happens is I now have 2 remotes, origin and upstream. The origin is usually when you fork a repo, you're considered the origin. That's how GitHub interprets it. So origin is me, and upstream is that. This also, when we do it this way, like suppose the organization repo has made a change, right? How do you update changes that have been made to that repo, right? So if I do git pull upstream master, right? It tells me everything is already up to date, okay? But I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go up to this. Now, I am able to add a test file to this repo only because I'm one of the owners of this repo. You won't be able to do it, but I'm gonna add something. I'm gonna call it test.py, and I'm just gonna do xxx to put something in there, right? So here's an organization. They've added a test.py file. Here's my forked repo. It doesn't show up. It doesn't show up here, right? But how do I get that updated version? So I go here, and because I made the change, when I do git pull upstream master, this time it will pull those changes down. So if you notice, at the bottom it says fast forward, test.py. This plus says I added 1 line to the file, 1 file change, 1 insertion, and when I do ls, notice that test.py file appears. Okay, so that's how That's how you update repos. You know, there's an organizational repo, we fork the repo, we're down at the terminal, and so the way of getting the most updated information is git pull upstream master. Somebody else also asked the question in terms of workflow. Let's say, you know, you're working on a project and different people working with it. So if you're, the best way to avoid a lot of problems down the line is to have a good workflow. So it's good to talk to the other people that you're collaborating with and say, hey, I'm working on this, just so there's no surprises. First thing in the morning, if I work on a project repo, I pull the latest updates, right? Because people are working on it at all different times making updates. I make sure I pulled the latest repo, I make my changes, and I make sure that before I go to bed that night, that anything that I've done, I've committed it. And if when the next person is working, they'll pull the latest changes. That's like the best way to avoid problems. There are a lot of problems that come up, and then there's a lot of troubleshooting. But the best thing is to just try to avoid those problems in the beginning. That's in terms of workflow. Okay, so, yep.
What's the master?
What's the
What's
okay.
Meaning, why do we have to have that extra
Right,
word?
okay. So master represents the branch. So we want to pull from the remote, upstream, and the master branch, right? So this is, it's sort of like good syntax to practice, so you always know it's like git pull remote name branch name, git push remote name branch name. And that's, you know, master is default, so it may probably go there anyway, but you just want to make sure to practice, it's good practice. It sort of helps, it sort of, you know, keeps it clear in your head, like, wait, what branch am I working on? Is this really what I want to be doing? So.
I guess you can, if there are different branches, you can pull change from different branches.
You can, and I haven't gone into it, but if you work with a big organization, and recently I did the Scikit Sprint, and there's all different branches, and there's options to fetch just a branch from an organizational repo. So yes, it can get very complicated. Some of these projects like Scikit-learn has, I don't even know how many branches. They have a few hundred pull requests that are there. They have a lot of people collaborating on this repository around the world, and so it's a complex project. Yeah. All right, so back to the workflow. Look at remotes, update a repo, list branches, and create a working branch. Okay, so what I will do before we did the look at the remotes, we updated the repo git pull. I'll stop it. I mean, I can do the git branch. This will do. Okay, I just have a master branch because that's the only branch that's there. So I'll stop at step 10 and let people catch up to that point. Okay. Okay. So is anyone not ready to move on and would like more time? No. All right. Great. So I'm going to go to step 11, which is I'm going to create a working branch, and I can call it whatever I want. I'm going to call it Git branch, I'm going to call it this one, feature conference, okay? When I do git branch, again, git branch is one of those syntax statements in Git that gives us information, doesn't break or change anything, so feel free to type it as often as you want. So git branch. Now, if you notice, I have two branches created. The asterisk is on master, which means even though I have two branches, I'm actually on my master branch, and it's also in green. Okay. If I want to go into the feature branch, what would I type? Right. Git checkout. Okay. So it's really, again, Git is really great at telling me what it's doing. It's telling me I switched to branch there. Okay. git checkout, and I'm going to create a file. Okay. So, and so pwd ls, okay, so I'm in this, and I'm going to go into the submissions folder, okay, and I have, there's different people's folders, so everyone's going to submit a pull request, and you can make a directory with your name in it. I already have one with my name in it, so I'm going to make a directory called Rachel. That's like my pseudonym when I'm going to a restaurant. Make directory Rachel. I go into Rachel folder, and then I'm going to do touch test. I'm going to do touch test Python. I'm just P up. Do call the file anything you please. Touch. And if I do ls, notice it's there. It's under the Rachel folder. Okay. And so I'm going to do, so if I hit Git Status, what happens? Okay. So when I hit Git Status, I'm in the folder, I have one file. It often gives me this sort of that. And this happens if you've just created a folder and you have one new file. So the way to, you can always CD out of it. And if I do Git Status again, notice it tells me, oh, you added a folder called Rachel, and basically everything that's in the folder is new. Okay? All right. So the next thing is, there's different ways to do this. I can do git add Rachel / okay. When I do Git Status, notice that, remember, when I did the git add, it just gave me the folder, but when I do Git Status, it tells me that, oh, it's gone from red to green, which means it's gone from being untracked to being tracked. It even tells me these are the changes to be committed. Okay, so it tells me that my next step is committing. And so I'm going to do git commit -m, adding test Python file. Okay, so I've committed. If I hit Git Status again, that green is gone. It tells me nothing to commit because anything I've changed, I've already made commitments. Okay, and so then if I want to push changes to my working branch, I do, remember it's git push remote name origin name. So my remote name is, let's look at the remotes again. I'm going to do git push origin. That's my remote name, right? You only want to push to your remote, not the other remote. And if you want, you can try pushing to the other remote. You'll get an error.
What are the two remotes?
The two remotes, the origin is your forked repo.
In the one I got from the organization,
right?
Now I have to fork my.
In your account.
That's the origin.
That's the origin. The upstream is the actual organizational repo. And the reason we made a connection is we want to be able to pull any changes they made down to our computer. But we don't really have push rights, even if it says that. And you can try it, you'll get an error. It's going to say you can't. For me, because I have access rights, I'll be able to push to it. But if you try it, it won't work. So if I do git push origin and the branch name, right? I worked off of a different branch. What was the branch name that I had? Feature, right? Feature conference. So great, it tells me that to GitHub Reshma S, this is the repo. It says there's a new branch, feature conf. I go here. Notice I'm under my forked repo. I go to master. There's this, it says here feature conf compare pull request. So let's see if I do that. Now it shows up. Okay, I just had to refresh my screen. When I click on branch, it tells me this new branch has been created and compare and pull request. So I can actually, when I go to the organizational repo, so notice under, I still have 14 pull requests because I actually didn't submit my pull request, but I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to do compare pull request. adding test path. Notice it goes from base fork women machine learning, master, and then it's taking the changes from my forked and this branch name, and it's merging it over there. So I'm creating the pull request. Okay. So I'm able to see this merge pull request, but you won't be able to. So the pull request is actually pretty good syntax because it's saying it's a request, right? We can't automatically push to it. And it's saying, can you pull it, right? It's asking the organization or the owner of the repo, can you pull this change that I just made? And so I go here, and there should be 15 pull requests now. Oh, there's 19. That's good. It means other people have gotten a pull request. And so as a repository owner, and you can think of this when you have your repos and you have other people collaborating on the repositories, Alberto Maria, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at, it tells me what's happening here, what the adding my Python test file. I'm going to go to file change, and I'm going to say, so submissions are, okay, that's good. I can actually view the file if I want. It's a blank file, that's fine. If I want to just go back, I will merge, I'm going to say thanks. Thumbs up. I'm going to comment on it, and then I'm going to merge the pull request. Okay, so when I go to Python Advanced, when I go under submissions, when I go to Alberto Maria, has submitted this Python file. Okay, so this is, imagine if you're working on a project and other people can contribute to that project. Okay, so I'm going to, it's 11:05. If you want to, okay, so so if you want to submit your pull request and take a break, should we do that? Yeah. And okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my repo, and I'm just going to go to the intro. Git terminology. Git's a system for version control. We know GitHub is on the browser. The two basic reasons that version control is helpful is one, it's a backup, so you have a backup of your work. And the second is collaborating with other people on projects. Okay. I went over the remotes, and the branching is like working in a draft folder. Remotes are copies of the machine, and then I have a couple of links to GitHub information. So before I go to workflow 3, does anybody have any questions at all, just in general about anything? Workflow, Git, anything that might need more clarification? So the next thing that I would say is for the third one, which is collaborating. It's built on the other stuff. So I would, if you want, so put the person next to you, sort of, find out their GitHub user ID, take a repo that they've created, clone it, and make changes to it. Okay? So I think everybody kind of has the same name of repo, so you might just want to not use any of the samples I did, make up any repo that you want. It can be your favorite fruit or vegetable, just so you have it. And then clone the repo and submit a change to their repo. All right, this is a little less structured. But just an update, so when you create a repo of your own, don't add, I might have to update my instructions, don't add collaborators, okay? Because people don't actually have to be a collaborator to contribute to your repo. They can, but in this example, we don't want to do that, okay? So create a sample repo, send it, tell your neighbor what that repo is, have them fork it, clone it, add the upstream, and submit a file to it. Okay.